Okay, my name is Larry Law. I'm on the board of the Executive Advisory Committee of the National China Garden. But more importantly, I can claim that I'm a good friend of Lily for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, Lily got to meet Lily when she ran the OCA DC chapter. And he's also on our website, our Miwa website, her picture. That's very important.
My claim to fame is I'm friends with you.
Yeah. So Lily, we are doing this interview because this is the month of the Asian American Pacific Heritage Month. So we want to increase the public awareness of the AAP culture and contribution to this country. And that's why the China Garden Foundation want to do this interview and we're going to have a lot of different speakers, different people that we interview. We have ambassador from and then to the college student from the East Asia and native born and immigrants, academic, politician, accomplished professor. So you're one of them. So we are so happy that you take time to do with us for this interview, Lily. So before we start, how's your time? You have an hour, you have 30 minutes or what?
Let's roll. We'll do as much as we can. How about that?
Okay, that's good. Okay, because they're going to dedicate to 15 minutes anyway. So let's start.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, first we'd like to see that you can share your time when you grew up in China and how long you've been here and all the childhood memory that you have in China. When did you arrive to this country, all these things?
Great. Well, first of all, Larry, it's so great to see you. It's been a long time, and I can only imagine what a tremendously difficult year it has been for you. So thank you for doing business in Montgomery County, Maryland, and being the National Capital Region and being community leader and a convener. I'm just very happy to be back and to talk to our friends again. Yes, I grew up in Shanghai, China, which is a small town that many people have heard of, right? I grew up at a very difficult time, the Cultural Revolution. Probably many of you are aware, and it was a tumultuous era for China. Most of us who grew up at that time, going on there, not much economic development or cultural stimulation or opportunities, right? But we did have some fun childhood memories growing up, back then. My family, my mom was a lifelong elementary school music teacher. So we had a little organ, unlike most families. We could actually entertain ourselves. So after dinner, our family would oftentimes sing all kinds of songs that she would teach us. So it was a good childhood, but not one with opportunities. So when I grew up, I realized there was a bigger world out there. And I decided to come to the United States to pursue opportunities, to open its doors to the world because it was an isolated country. So many of us, young people, well-educated young people especially, decided to leave everything behind to take the risk of pursuing a life for ourselves. And that was how I came. I came in 1989, which was itself a very dramatic year that changed the world, right? And the Soviet Union collapsed when there was, student movement on Tiananmen Square and all of that. I came before the student movement, and so it was part of that memory of the dramatic year I came. And it was tremendously difficult when I first came here. Linguistically, I had to struggle. Culturally, I had to struggle because I was already an adult. You can imagine you start your life all over again by myself. So I had to use a Walkman to record all the lectures in college in order to go back to my room and listen to the recordings. And I don't think these young ladies understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, same here. I need
What's
that
a Walkman, right?
Yeah, I need that.
It was actually pretty cool back then. But we all went through these struggles as international students and then immigrants. But there was a faith in all of us, and there was hope that someday we'll make it. This is America. That as long as you work hard and apply yourself, that there's opportunity for everyone. So I'm just very pleased that I made that journey.
That's great. And as you know that I know you for so long, and I'm one of the people that always drag you, try to ask you to run for office because we saw the talents in you right away
You
from the
did.
beginning. And you did, and then you decided to run, and you won the first time, and you beat some incumbent. That's a big deal to
Oh,
the community too. I know it's for you, so we're very proud of that election. So it's one more coming up the election next year. We will continue to support you anyway. That's good.
thank you. You're right. You were one of the community leaders who strongly urged me repeatedly to run for office. At first, I laughed it off and say that's not for me. But over time, I realized that my kind of voice would be important. So thank you for your encouragement.
Yeah, so now you are the state delegates from District 15 of Montgomery County and
Yeah.
represent the state of Maryland. So
Yeah.
please share some of your personal experience that inspire you to pursue the career of the politics.
Well, that's a long story, but as you realize, Larry, even though Asian Americans are a fast growing community and we have been making great marks on many fronts, but politics is the last frontier, partly because many of us are immigrants who grew up in other cultures and political systems. We did not grow up in elective democracy. That itself is a new concept that many people still don't understand. And we also don't see ourselves as an empowered people where we could voice our concerns and expect the changes to happen, right? We didn't grow up in that kind of environment to be encouraged to vocalize and to push the boundaries to make changes ourselves. We were taught to follow the rules. I grew up in a very vertical, top-down kind of culture, right? Not to mention the entirely different political system. So it's a long learning curve. Plus, you spend first 10, 20 years struggling just to get by, voting and running for office is sort of the last thing you would think of. But over time, I realized, what it really means to be an American, right? I adopted the Asian American identity. I'm not just a Chinese. Other people's eyes, I'm an Asian American woman, and I had to deal with other people's perceptions of me being a minority, as a woman, as an immigrant, and so I had to confront many levels of discrimination, struggles, and challenges. Right, so I spent more time reflecting on these things, and I decided to get involved just to learn, like involved in OCA, Organization of Americans, which Mr. Sam Mock used to also, be a president of OCA DC, right? To learn about what it means to be American as an Asian, as a Chinese. And over time, I felt like we need more voices, and not necessarily running for office, but just to vote, just to be engaged in civic matters, to serve on boards, committees, and commissions, to show people that we are as much part of the community as anyone else, to kind of anchor our communities locally, because some people care more about elections at their home countries than elections locally. They don't even know who their local representatives are, right? And to me, we don't really need to wait a generation to be Americans. We are Americans. Americans come with all sizes and looks and accents. We don't have to be uniform to be Americans. So once I realized these things over time, I said, why not people like us, right? So I devoted myself to public service. I became a political appointee by former County Executive Mike Leggett. I enjoyed doing community engagement work. I spent a lot of time encouraging other people to vote, to donate, and to do all kinds of things. And over time, people like me kept saying, "Why don't you run? Why don't you run?"
Yeah,
And
I'm
I
one of
said,
them.
"Okay, yeah." I said, "Okay, if no one else will step up, then somebody has to do it."
No, no, yeah, no, no.
you know?
Yeah, during those activity of the community, and yeah, during the time that you work for the local government, and we see the talents in you. That's why anytime I see you, said run, really run.
Thank you, thank you.
And then you did, and you did a great job, and you won it very significantly too. And so you've been delegate for 3 years now.
Yes, 3 sessions. I
Three
won
sections. Yeah.
and I started serving in January 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So since you've been in Annapolis working there, what is your most challenged moment, and what's the most memorable moment that you have during that 3 years? 3 years seem
Well,
like pretty long.
yeah, it's been actually 2.5 years, but 3 sessions. And the time really went by fast. My class of freshman legislators never had a really normal session, so to speak, because as soon as we joined the Maryland legislature, a lot of dramatic things happened. We had a speaker, a Senate president, and we had the most diverse class to join the legislature. Maryland legislature now has uh, the highest number of women in its history, legislators, and also the most diverse body that looks more and more like today's Maryland. Uh,
That's good.
10 Asian Americans, including myself. I'm the only Chinese. We have two other Chinese Americans, for example, on the Senate side, right? Senator Susan Lee and Senator Claire Lam. But we also have, 7 other Asian American, including South Asian, Korean American, and all that, part of the legislative body. So I joined at the right time, and we really are, making a lot of changes. I think one of the greatest challenges is, as an immigrant, as an Asian American, because there's still not many of us. The things I care about, the things I know my communities care about, sometimes don't resonate with a larger community. For example, I care deeply about economic competitiveness, right? I just feel like not enough legislators focus on growing our economy. And that is the reason why I tell myself, no matter how hard it is, I need to be there to present a different perspective, to tell people why immigrants came to this country because of economic opportunities, which is why we need to grow our economy. We cannot be complacent. We need to
Yeah.
be competitive with Northern Virginia, with whatever, with Massachusetts, our innovation economy. So I think that part of my voice is extremely important, as well as understanding today's immigrant, right? So I also work on many initiatives to make elections more accessible to independent voters, because many of our people are independent voters. They don't like joining Democrat Party or Republican Party. That's how they think. They just want to focus on issues instead of joining some political parties. So I to educate my fellow legislators about our communities and our political engagement patterns and dynamics. So I would say that's one of the greatest challenges. Unless I convince them, they are not going to vote on my bills to
Yeah.
pass, right? So that will continue to be a challenge, but it convinces me that I need to be there, because
Yeah.
if I'm not there, I would be a missing voice, right?
Sure. Yeah. But even though you are the only Chinese American in the House, and Susan Lee and Claire Lam, they both senator now, but they used to be
Yes.
the
They
delegates
used
to
to be in the House, right?
the
And
House.
they did a
But
great job. That was how they
yeah,
got elected to the Senate. Yeah.
but they both born here, right? You're the only one that born overseas to be
Yes,
delegate.
I am the first Chinese speaking and a
Yeah,
Chinese born
that's a
legislator.
that's a big deal too. That's another significant there because American born, they grow up here, they know that. But you came from overseas as an adult, and then you adapt to that, and you can be the state delegate. That's to me, it's a big deal.
Larry, I think you hit a very important point, which was because I speak English as second language and I share the same cultural roots with a lot of Asian immigrants. When I ran in 2018, my campaign helped unleash so much new energy. So many people told me I had never voted before, but because of your campaign, my whole family voted, or my whole family voted in the primary election. I said, I don't care which party you register, but register for a political party.
Exactly,
Opt
exactly.
out of Maryland's primary election, don't register for a political party. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing about Asian American as Chinese American too. People
Yeah,
don't tend to go to vote, and I'm same thing. I encourage people to register to vote. I said we don't care whether you vote for Republican or Democrat, but at least you have to register to vote.
that's
Otherwise,
right. Be
we are
relevant.
not. Yeah,
Yes.
they don't see on the data that that many. We have that 15% of Asian American in
Mhm.
a state, but how many people that register to vote is more important.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So dealing with culture, you've been dealing with not just Asian American, but you deal with different kind of cultures in the and
Yes,
especially Montgomery County, we have a very multicultural society here. So how
extremely.
do you deal with that?
Yes.
You have to deal with different group or what?
Mhm.
Can you share with that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very happy to talk about, cultural competency at the individual level and at the institutional level. When before I ran for office, I worked in different areas, including working as a community liaison for Montgomery County, engaging the Asian American and Middle Eastern communities, and many of them, whether they're East Asians, Southeast Asians like yourself, or South Asians, which is Indian, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, right? We all struggle to different extent in this country, and there are challenges for immigrants. And so I saw some common issues, such as low level of political engagement and all that. So I made myself a student of local community demographics. I made a point of learning about these cultures, okay? And I made a point of learning about the Muslim community dynamics and the Jewish community dynamics, especially how they built social infrastructure, especially how they built nonprofits to serve the vulnerable, to advocate for themselves, how they get involved politically. And I kept telling my Asian American community organizations and leaders, right, look at the Jewish community, look at which has been historically, persecuted, and look at the Muslim community, which share a lot of the same professions. They are also very much like the Asian Americans in terms of their professional choices, where they live and work, and where the kids go to school, and all of that. Um, but look at how they organize themselves. Look at the issues they focus on. Right, they are much more aware uh, that the local dynamics can directly impact our standing in this country as Americans. So they make a point of building community bridges with other communities, and they focus on how to do good in the larger community beyond their own ethnicities or religions and cultures. And that's the kind of model and a pattern that I hope to see replicated in the Asian American community. Now, the challenge with our communities, there are so many languages, unlike the Hispanic community, which primarily share one language, and we also have different religions, different nationalities and ethnicities. These are silos that you have to intentionally. Otherwise, we're not one community, and each is tiny, still. So there are many dimensions that I continue to learn, and I continue to share with uh, the lessons learned with my other legislators and with other communities to help facilitate these common dialogues and wisdom.
So you would draw a lot of community to there. Mhm.
Yeah, like I would host webinars, to bring several nonprofit executives just to share their experiences of building nonprofits and going after grants, how to market their programs to underserved the communities and all of that. Because during the pandemic, it's all the more important that people know where the resources are, right? And my Asian American community leaders sent me many emails afterwards and say that was the best webinar I attended about nonprofits, because I learned so much about how the larger community build these organizations. And that's something we can do in our own communities, right?
Yeah.
So that gave me so much gratification and say, that's my role as a cultural broker. That's my role as a convener, by translating what I learned in the larger community to apply to our community.
Yeah, and yesterday the President Biden just signed to law about the Asian hate crime.
Mhm.
So we have that in Annapolis too.
Yeah, Maryland is one of the progressive states on the forefront of combating hate crimes, and we have passed many different bills over the years to tighten our laws about hate crimes, and also we are a very welcoming community by and large. But
Mhm.
still heard reports of incidents, even though we haven't seen many violent crimes, except for some restaurants being vandalized. I think in Howard County, um, around Lunar New Year time. And yes, people were being punched and beaten, but they were overall isolated incidents, right? That doesn't mean people did not feel harassed, verbally, abused. even though if it was not physical. So yes, I think in light of what's going on, it's all the more important that we are at the table, that we are visible, that we speak out against any form of aggression, not necessarily physical, violent aggression, but also everyday discrimination, right? Everyday discrimination can be reflected in contracting opportunities for small businesses. Everyday discrimination could be, being passed for a promotion at work. Everyday discrimination could be, feeling isolated socially at work, or just all kinds of forms, right? I think we need to speak out whenever we see any forms of a microaggression at every level.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So can you give us a kind of a typical day in that you when you work in as delegate in Annapolis, just from the morning to afternoon late section? Do you have late section work late at night or something?
Yeah, well, so right now, the Maryland legislature only convenes 90 days a month. I'm sorry, 90 days a year, which is about 3 months every year between January and April. The
You
rest,
you have to stay in
yeah, during that
Annapolis
time,
during that
most of
time.
us, yeah, most of us who are pretty far from Annapolis will have to stay there during the session, during the weekdays. But the rest of the time, we are still busy, serving communities because there are a lot of constituent issues, from streetlights to whatever, senior issues, and we have to respond to and fix. But beyond that, there are many public events that I need to be part of. And we also, spend a lot of time during the interim between sessions to prepare for next year's legislation. When people bring issues to us, we have to research and see if we want to turn that into an idea for a new piece of legislation, and what kind of stakeholders we need to engage to advocate for these things. So there's a lot of engagement, research, during the interim. So we're always busy, and it really is more of a full-time job, even though we're paid part-time. you know, you have to really
So
love it. It's a lot of work. That's what I'm trying to say.
I
There's no
know.
typical day, but if I have to say a typical day, it would be anywhere from responding to constituent emails to having many Zoom calls with different stakeholders about how to advance a bill idea, to addressing a specific issue, to speaking at a different community event. So it's a whole gamut, and usually it's from morning until like sometimes in the evening. Like last night it ended at 8 o'clock. That's what a typical day looks like.
Yeah. So
To
you
be
said
on all
only
the time.
about 3 months on the job, but how about the other 9 months? What would you do as a delegate?
Well,
Or
as I just said, we don't. That's what we call the interim. So we don't really have downtime during the interim. We prepare for legislation, we engage the communities, and we prepare for next year.
so do you have another full-time job for that? For
I
the
don't, but many people do. Many people, especially younger people, they are still raising families, and some of them have another income to supplement that, to actually make a living. Some people
yeah.
take on some teaching, consulting kind of things. Yeah, but many people have different lifestyles. Some people treat this as their primary job. Some people have a day job and then do this because they are much more seasoned legislators. But so we're all different. Yeah. It's a very diverse, professionally diverse representative body.
Yeah. So this month is the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. That's why the National China Garden Foundation, we want to do an interview with different people
Mhm.
from different walk of life. All the Asian, they could be ambassador from different country before they native born immigrants, academic or everybody else. So we'd like to get you to be involved. That's why you are one of the person that we stick up to make sure that you have to participate. No, kidding. And so the last thing that we'd like you to really give the advice to the younger people, especially the APAI female, if they are interested in the politics or the public work, it's not easy because most of the Asian kids, they would like to be a doctor, engineer, or everything. So really, to get involved with the civic and work for the government is need to be encouragement. So you would be the typical one to give advice to
Yeah, I will be more than happy to share some words of wisdom. But first of all, no matter which profession you choose as your career path, know that your careers might change over time. Because the market changes all the time, right? You could study one thing and you end up doing something very different 10 or 20 years later. So don't lock yourself into one mode and be adaptive, you know. And over time, you know, no matter where you start, over time you will find yourself. Mm, you will find what really resonates with you, what you really are passionate about. And life is short. Don't wait another 20, 10, 20 years to do what you really love to do. You know, just take the risk. As they say, the biggest risk is the risk you don't take, right? So we should encourage our young people to doodle out of the lines, to not just follow the footsteps, to not just think of themselves as hardworking, you know, people who follow the rules. We want to cultivate our younger generation to learn to help set the rules, you know, because that's how I think of myself. I am at the table to help set the rules, because if I don't like the rules, let's break it and set new rules, right? Rules
them.
that make sense to me, you know, and to our people. That's what's important, right? They are as American as anyone else, no matter what their last name is. You know, I say
Yeah,
anything you want in, you know, in Vietnam or China, whatever profession these days. You know, these societies are much more open compared to the time we grew up, right? But only in America can you run for office and get elected by people who can't even pronounce your name. So take advantage of that. This is such a wonderful, you know, society and open country. So just use your imagination, stretch your imagination, think about what's possible. And I also tell young people, don't ever apologize for who you are. You know, bring your whole self to work, because chances are your voice is not only important, whether you're a scientist or a politician or whatever, but it's probably what's missing at the table, because your unique life perspective is what's missing at the table, right? And America needs us oftentimes more than it realizes, you know, to be competitive, to be vibrant, to be successful. So I think that as we fulfill our personal dreams and the potential, we should all work together to make America more competitive and successful, and fulfill her potential as well, because this is our home. This is where we belong.
yeah, I agree with you that only in this country that people from different background, different country, they come here and become official. I mean, 15 years ago or 12 years ago, people can't even pronounce the last name Obama,
That's right.
but then he became the first African American president of the United States, and he's a very
Yeah.
successful president too, and did a great
Yeah.
job. And
That's right.
so that kind of encouraged a lot of other people that have the last name different
Yeah.
than Johnson, Jones, or Smith to be involved with the government.
That's right.
And
Don't feel bad if your last name is unpronounceable. Force people to learn to pronounce your last name.
yeah,
Force
really,
them, you know,
yeah, you have to. Well,
right?
thank you so much, Livy, for your time and to share
Absolutely.
all your experience with us. And we're always very proud of you, as I said
Thank you
many
very
times.
much. It's such a pleasure to join you, and I really appreciate all you do for our community as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you.